right, welcome everybody. We're going to shift gears here. If the kids want to go with Shirley, I think they're going to go do some painting, so that'll be fun. Good luck. But she'll meet you in the back, and we're gonna kind of shift gears and get into our program here. So please feel free to continue to eat. There's plenty of food. There's all kinds of deliciousness over there. Don't feel like you can't get up and grab something. There's plenty of opportunities for all of that. There's also coffee over here if anybody needs it. So I really do appreciate everyone being here tonight. It's one of the things about going through something and doing a thing, as they say, is that you need to tell people about doing a thing. And in fact, if we don't tell people about doing a thing, we kind of get a little squirrely about, well, did we really do that thing? And that actually what the world needs from us is actually the telling of our stories of kind of the doing of our things. And so I truly believe that, for me, I'm not as much as I am a guy who stands in front of people and talks a lot, I am still not one who really desires to kind of, have you all kind of look at me in terms of, look what I did. But I am convinced that there is richness and there is power and there's importance and there's beauty in telling the stories of our journeys. And this is very much a journey, and it's very much a journey that the church and all of you, everybody in here, really went with me on this. Many of you, encouraged me in so many different ways. You made it possible for me to be there, and so I feel very, very strongly that it was important to do this and to help tell the story. So what happened? What was the journey? So to kind of the story of the movie thus far is that I applied and was able to go on this pilgrimage with a group called Warriors on the Way. Warriors on the Way has once a year they take 9 combat veterans and 3 staff people, 1 priest, 1 psychologist, and 1 basically logistician who might be the wisest one of the 3 of them, quite honestly, but who kind of keeps things on the road and that sort of thing. And we do 180 miles of the Camino de Santiago, which is possibly one of the oldest pilgrimages in the world. We know for a fact people have been doing it for at least 1,000, if not 1,200 years. There's evidence that it goes way back much, much, much further, possibly as far as even 2,000 years from the time of James himself. So, it's a walking to the bones of St. James in the crypt of the Cathedral of Santiago. That's what it is in its most naked form. And we did 180 miles of that through kind of the mountainous part of Spain, and we did it in about 12 days. So it's a fairly aggressive schedule. I still have some foot blisters that will testify to that 16 weeks later, but it's journey, and so the first question you get is, did you do the whole thing? When you talk about the Camino or something like that, if people have heard of it, and I just want to give you the flavor of this is kind of what these are the different routes that are documented for the Camino. There are dozens and dozens of them. It shows you, and the whole point of this is to kind of show you the power of the pilgrimage to Santiago. Within Christendom, there are considered 3 great pilgrimages: one to Jerusalem, one to Rome, the other to Santiago. So it's considered one of the big 3 in that regard. And these are all the different paths. And nobody laid these down. Like the church didn't say, the Pope didn't say, hey, make a road over there so pilgrims can walk it. These naturally occurred over years of people's call to go to this sacred and holy place. Now whatever you think about that and however you understand that, the call to go towards the holy, the call to go towards that which is sacred, is deeply instilled in everyone. It is born in every one of us, and I think it's a part of. And so I just wanted to show you that map to give you the sense of how powerful the draw is and has been historically to this place. This was our route. We started in Astorga, and if you kind of know topography at all, you can see that there's some, there's some bumpy pieces along the way. We'll talk about a few of those, but this 180 miles that brought us to Santiago. So we originally arrived in San Antonio. Got to San Antonio, got our gear issue, kind of had a chance to meet each other for the first time. This is a group of people that had never met each other. Like, there was a few people that I'd corresponded with and known, but we were really thrown into this, without knowing anybody, kind of in good military fashion. Like, hey, you bunch of people go over there and get to know each other along the way. I know, and I just took this picture and wanted to share it because it's like, this is when it all started to get a little bit real. It's like, I had been training, I'd been working, if you're in Westport, you probably saw me running around with a rucksack on. I was doing a lot of miles here and there, and but I got to this place where I'm going to get on a plane and I'm going to go do nothing but walk for a couple weeks, at the tender age of 54, and with a proclivity for donuts. This was not necessarily, there were questions in terms of what my ability to endure this was. So this was the moment that I began to feel the real constriction of we really are going to this place to do this thing. And we got off the plane. They kind of stuffed us in a bus. You get there, you fly overnight, get there in the morning, you kind of get something to eat. They go through customs, they stuff you in a bus, and at the end of the transportation moment, we step out to this. They literally roll the bus up to the front of the cathedral, and we punch out, and you realize, I am not in Kansas anymore. That this, the world in which I was inhabiting is actually now different. I'm now inhabiting a different world. And then next door to it, this is actually, if you know a little bit about Spain or architecture or anything, this was actually designed and built by Gaudi, or the great architect Gaudi. This was built as the bishop's house for the Bishop of Astorga. Gaudi built it in fine Gaudi fashion, looking like a Gaudi building, and the bishop came and looked at it and said, I can't live in that. It was entirely too ostentatious. So it ended up being kind of being a museum and becoming a thing, but it was, these are kind of some of the pieces and the trappings around it, and I just wanted to show you that to kind of give you that sense of, things just got really different in terms of where we were and what we were doing. And so we get to the first place that we're staying, and this was our first what are called an albergue, which is a hostel specifically for pilgrims. And so and this is our little group of misfit toys. The two hosts actually were Americans that had expats that had found a place and wanted to be a part of the Camino experience and support pilgrims along the way. They actually made it their lifestyle, and so so in our arrival there, we were getting ready to step off in the morning. So some of you got to see I got to do a show and tell with some of you about the necessary things for a pilgrim. One is the shell, one is the Compostela, and one is the passport. But the other really is espresso. And so we run a lot. We ran a lot on that. And then also kind of our also kind of our meal tonight, kind of spaghetti bolognese, and the occasional beer. So that and this was kind of and it became very quickly, like within a day or so, it became, I don't want to say a lifestyle, but it became a way of being. That to wake up, to put your shoes on, we would go to worship, and we would be on the road before light. It was I think only once in the days were we out the door after sunrise. We were always on the road. We always walked. We began the day walking in the dark, and we would walk till probably 9 or 10 in the morning. We would get stop for breakfast, get something to eat, continue to walk basically to the end of the day, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then we would get in, get cleaned up, and get ready to turn around for dinner and kind of our evening reflection on what we did. We had worship every day. That's a component of it. Because part of this was the goal to help warriors heal from post-traumatic stress and from moral injury. And so we began the day with Father Steve kind of doing his thing, and then that's me on the first day. I just stepped out of the albergue, and we're about to head off, and that's my oh man face. That's like what like. We were just talking about it earlier. I could have gone on a cruise. Why did I not go on a cruise? As we're just about ready to step off, into the darkness. We would actually spend the beginning of the day, the first half hour to an hour, walking in silence intentionally, as a way of kind of just getting oriented on the Camino that day, spending a little time either in silent reflection, silent prayer, but we were always, and it was very funny to me how quickly, I'm a chaplain, I've got the faith piece, but how quickly the other 8 warriors, very quickly, began to respect this rhythm and very quickly realized the power and the importance of it, of the welcoming the day and walk in silence, and the power of what that brought to them. And this is me at the end of the day. So one of the things that happened to me throughout is that, there's a phrase on the Camino that they say the Camino provides, and that means is kind of, and it's used as kind of like if you need something, it will show up, like whether it's kind of some sort of healing, some sort of, kind of spiritual thing, or also like a physical thing. Often people would I need some sunglasses, and they would find sunglasses, and it was a real thing. I mean, there is a real energy about this place, and you can say maybe it's just you can dress it up in any number of ways. I mean, last year 450,000 pilgrims went into Santiago from all of the different routes. 450,000. That's 1 year. Okay, we're talking about we've been doing this for 1,000 years. How many millions of pilgrims? How many millions of footsteps? How many millions of intentions have been laid into the soil that you walk when you walk that place? And so, so this notion that the Camino provides also means that somebody on the Camino has to do the providing, and that was me. Because I spent the entire Camino shedding things as I went. Unintentionally, mind you. It wasn't like I was in some deep kind of minimalist thing. No, I lost my hat. I lost my sunglasses. If it wasn't literally tied to me by the time I was done, I just shed things as I went. And I had lost my sunglasses here, and that's why I'm making such a pretty face at the end of the day, because I'm like, It is a incredible kind of journey to be on as we step into it in such different ways. So what do we want to talk about tonight? I know that's a long introduction, but that kind of gets us. We're on the Camino now. Now we're into it, and I don't want to take you blow by blow through the whole thing. I actually would love to do that, but we don't have like 5 hours. So. but I want to give you this. This quote was sent by actually Steve, who runs the group, and he really is a at the end of his, to give you the sense of who we were walking with. I know some of you got the chance to meet him before I left on Zoom. Before he retired from the Army, he was the senior chaplain at the Army Medical School, teaching on post-traumatic stress and moral injury. He has a PhD in this stuff. He is one of the smartest people out. He's forgotten more about the care of the soul than I know. But he sent this quote, and I think it's kind of what's going to guide us tonight is the Christian holy sites essentially function as places of encounter, of revelation, and of transformation, a triad of intersecting dynamics. And this resonated with me. And so I want to kind of tell three stories. I want to tell the story of encounter and revelation and transformation, because I did encounter all of those along the way. And this was written by D. Dias, who is considered one of the master blasters, smartest people in the world on pilgrimage. The first is this notion of transformation, and this is at this place along the Camino called the Cruz de Ferro. So the Cruz de Ferro is you can kind of see it there. It's a big wooden pole, big wooden obelisk, and at the top is an iron cross. So it's called the Iron Cross in Spanish. We're not a complicated people on the Camino, and it is the highest point on the Camino de Santiago. So on the Camino Francés, it's the highest physical point of relief, and this was placed. There's people fight about who placed it. Some people say that Charlemagne placed it in the 8th century. Some people say the guy who lived up the road placed it on the 10th century, the local abbot. Either way, that pole or some variation of that pole has been there for 1,000 years. And people have come, and it has become the place that people, when they start out the Camino, that they bring a rock from their home as a symbol both of something that they want to release, something they want to let go of. For the ancients, it was the symbol of the sin that actually, bishops back in the day or priests back in the day would actually, for somebody who was really trying to expiate themselves of something hard and set something down that they struggled with, they would prescribe Camino, and they would say, take this rock and go put it on the cross on the Cruz de Ferro, and go. It was actually a spiritual prescription for what ails you back in the day. And I actually think it's probably a really good prescription for what ails us in modernity as well. So it is. You can see a bit, and you'll see in some of the other pictures that there's this. That it has a pile of rocks at the bottom of it. None of those rocks are organic to that site. They were carried there by pilgrims. And in fact, that there are so many rocks that accumulate every 2 or 3 times a year. The Spanish government have to come in with bucket loaders and take the rocks away, because otherwise the cross would be covered over. That it would block the road. It would just become too much of a hazard. They actually have to clean this out because a couple times a year. That's me at the beginning of the day. We walked up. Now the Cruz de Ferro, again, it's the highest point. So it wasn't a long hike, but it was a pretty good hike, all in red light as we went. And these pictures start to give you a little bit of a sense of how many rocks are actually there. Every one of those rocks is somebody's weight, the heaviness of somebody's soul, something that they couldn't find another way to let go of, couldn't find another way to get rid of, that they broke their feet, broke their back, and to walk and to place in that place. So we went up and we placed our rocks at the foot of the cross, and then we had worship. One of the things that happens along.
How many miles
So it was not far. We actually had a lot further to go that day. So this was fairly early on in the day. So I think it was 3 or 4 miles to that. So we stayed at the bottom of the hill, and basically it was kind of 3 miles up, and then we at the top of the hill, and then the rest of the day was kind of going up and down. But But the thing is even at night, even at this hour, even in this early in the morning, you're walking with other pilgrims. You're almost all, sometimes you'll find yourself alone, but often you're walking with other pilgrims. And as, Steve started to get his kid out and all this sort of stuff, and we were kind of mingling around, waiting for him to get ready to kind of have worship. There were a few people there was particularly one woman, actually a few people. There was one woman that stopped and waited to worship with us. Now I carried my rock. I carried 2 rocks. They both were a product of my deployment, and I'd picked them up while I was training because I felt like they were really needed to come from my home, and so I picked them up and along the side of the road in Westport or on the trails of Westport or wherever I was. Training that day, and one was a white quartz and one was a pretty black, who knows what it was. But for me, particularly as a chaplain in war, I wasn't pulling triggers. I wasn't in the business of hurting people, but I was in the business of bearing witness to the hurt of the world. And there were people that I was deployed with, that I was there, that I could see their hurt. And I could see the way in which they were hurting. I could see the way in which they were carrying it in their time. One guy I was deployed with that I can think of now. It was we had a suicide in a unit next door to us, and he found the body of the person that had suicided, and it was a thing that disturbed him pretty greatly. And he. But I could never crack the nut. I could never kind of get to that. And and there were other people that just weren't mine to care for. And there were other people that, I could bear witness to it from a distance in terms of what had happened, in terms of combat injuries and things like that. And for all of that I couldn't touch, I carried kind of a black rock. And then, for all the stuff, then the white rock I carried for all the stuff, for those moments where I got to bear witness to the Spirit at work, where actually healing did happen because, a guy showed up with a, 75-cent piece of cloth that had a cross on it, and that made me completely different than everybody else there. And the ability to stand in that place and to bear witness to the wound and to let, the goodness of the world and the product of the Spirit go to work on those people. But I needed to lay that down because I had as much to do with that as I had, the next breath I will take. That is not mine to carry. It was mine to give back as well. And so I need to set those things down. And so those were my rocks, and I want to share those with you tonight because I haven't shared that with anybody else. Now we're all friends. But that woman who joined us for worship, it overwhelmed me with emotion, the fact that she was there, because here I was with a bunch of yahoos, a bunch of warriors, in many ways, as chaplains, you run with the wolves, but you're not a wolf, But these guys were real wolves. They had done real damage in the world, and they had real damage done to them. And to be with that group, and to bear witness with them, and then to have this woman simply stand and worship with us. It was profound for me. It was one of the most healing, it was most transformative things that I've encountered in a long time, because what it offered me was this link. She stood as this link between all of the horror, all of the brokenness, all of the messed up reality of the world that both, whether it's wherever you find it, and that world of the Army, that world of the military that had kind of contained that had built a container for that, and said that's where it's going to be. And then she stepped into that space and said, you know what? The whole world sees this. The whole world sees it. The whole world knows it. And we come to the table and we worship, and we're still loved, and we are still known for our good, and there is still goodness and grace. That we're not lost in it, we're not disconnected, we're not broken, but and she really became a lifeline for me. She was from Georgia. That's all I know. That's all I know. I saw her one other time. Found out she was from Georgia. That's the reality. There's that. My picture. My rocks are in there. And then that's us taking off and headed out for the rest of the day, which was a pretty good day after that. So the second story I want to share with you, and if you have a question, feel free to jump in. The second story is about Revelation, and this is from Oserabo Chapel. Oserabo Chapel is it's about, some people say it's a 12th century chapel, so 900-ish years old. It is the chapel that had one of the what are considered within the Catholic tradition Eucharistic miracles, meaning that the wine actually turned to blood, the bread actually turned to flesh. There are a number of them around that are documented around the world, actually more than you would think. But this was a very kind of sleepy one, because one, it happened a long time ago, but it was actually witnessed by thousands of people, and so it's a really interesting place to kind of and to step into this place. It's a place of it is simply a place of power. That's all I can say about it. It's on the line between Leon and Galicia. Like you forget that the different pieces of Spain actually used to be different kingdoms, and so they actually have different geography. They have different dialects. They have also, and so we actually hiked from Leon into Galicia. And as soon as you get into Galicia, this is the signpost for it. But to get to that stone was about. It was about 6 miles straight up. I kid you not. It was as steep a grade as I have ever climbed in my life. Now, it was on a road and it was on a trail, but it was all this incredible switchbacks, and there was times when I could lean out and touch the ground in front of me. It's that steep. And oh yeah, we had to do it in the dark because that's how we do things apparently. In the rain, it was raining that day, because you can see we all have our snivel gear out, and again, I have the question of why am I not on a cruise? Because it was physically perhaps the most demanding piece of the whole thing to try to get up the hill, and so to get to this point was actually, we'd already been through a thing to get to that point. So one of the things that they would do is we would take pictures occasionally, and there's a lot of smiles here because we are happy to be done climbing for at least that piece of the day. So this just so you can see. So this is if you look in that light, the light's down there, way down in the way background, right over here. Yeah, well, we started way down there. And so we actually came up the backside of this ridge line and then around this way, and we're standing here. And so it literally is some of the steepest grade I'd ever climbed. But and so this is kind of another shot down into that where we came up that ridge line. So Paulo Coelho wrote a book called The Pilgrimage, based on his pilgrimage of the Camino, his Camino. And as he does, if you're familiar with his work, The Alchemist, that sort of stuff, he has this, he usually has these characters that have this conversation between each other. And And this struck me for this entry into, as we came to this little, because basically it's a little mountaintop village that will take you back 1,000 years. The houses haven't changed. It's really quite a little place, and it does really kind of open itself up to you in a way. So, and it's this, and I love this quote because it kind of made me think of this kind of transformative idea of, life always teaches us more than the road to Santiago does, he answered, but we don't have much faith in what life teaches us. And it actually requires us to go to these places, to go to the road to Santiago, to climb these mountains, to actually begin to encounter them. So it was raining that morning. So we're all, nothing happens early in Spain. I don't know if you know this, but nothing happens early in Spain. And so we're there. We're at the top of the mountain at the break of dawn, and nobody else is really interested in that. And so we're waiting on the priest that's going to come open the building And so we're hiding out there, and then we would kind of come into the building there. So that's actually the reliquary there on the left is the reliquary of the Eucharistic miracle. And again, whatever you think about that, if you think it's hokum, if you think it's sleight of hand, if you think it is that there are real miracles in it, what you have to remember is whatever you think of it doesn't matter. There have been 1,000 years of devotion of people climbing that hill to go up there to pray in front of those items, in front of those objects. And if you think they're just a bunch of gummy worms stuffed in a box, it doesn't matter because of the power that is pointed in the direction of those things. And I'm not saying that's how things become holy, but I am saying that they're a thing that you have to take seriously. And also up there is the Pilgrim's Prayer, which I'm going to try and read for you later, but the encounter of that. So this is the chapel there, and so Steve was getting ready for Mass, and again we were kind of huddling around and getting ready for worship, but one of the things that started happening, just like the day before, as we were preparing for worship, more people started wandering in, and more people started wandering in, and more people started wandering in. By the time he was ready to go, about 15 minutes later, there were nearly 100 people stuffed in that chapel. The chapel was entirely full, and they all stayed and worshipped, and they all stayed, and there were people who could sing, not me, but there were people who could sing, and they sang. It became what was 9 warriors struggling their way up a hill became this incredible feast of the Spirit that encouraged a whole bunch of people. The day before, we'd been walking with these one guy's an Austrian, one guy's a German. Apparently there's a difference. Who knew? They were friends, and we'd walking with them, and they were very secular guys, like very, 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 and which was great. Like that's not a judgment, but even they stayed, and kind of there was this reverential experience that they were having that they couldn't even make sense of. They had to, they left shortly after, and we're quickly telling fart jokes, so don't worry. But there's, if you know German humor, that makes more sense. But there's this way in which they it was this profound experience that nobody orchestrated, and yet was in fact very orchestrated, and was in fact very much very powerful in its revelation, in its kind of revealing itself. And it just revealed this deep hunger that every one of us carry for the connection to the one who made us, for the connection to the true, the good, and the beautiful, and that to step out and to seek it. Now, off of this sanctuary is the baptismal room. So that baptismal tub there that you see at the edge, that's the edge of it. It is literally it's a stone kiddie pool with 3 foot high walls. It's really and it's again that's the old part of the chapel. So it's probably 1,000 years old, hewn out of a solid piece of rock. And to walk into that space alone was literally, and every single person, even our most secular guy, even the most, everyone said as they walked into that room, there was a visceral encounter with Spirit as you walked in. I went in to light a candle. It was the anniversary of my dad's death in a couple of days, and I wanted to go in and light a candle. And I went in and I lit a candle and I wept, like I had not cried in my adulthood. And that was not just about grief about my dad. Like that, I was sad. I'm sad about my dad. I'm still sad about my dad. But that was not what was going on there. There was an outpouring in that was again, that kind of revealed stuff inside me I didn't even know was in me. And it was so the power of the power of committing ourselves and intending ourselves towards these practices have a way of opening us that nothing else can. They require our bodies to move. They're not just an earlobe up experience. They require our intention. They require even our sacrifice, like us making a sweat and working hard. And then kind of that's kind of a better shot of the reliquary and us kind of leaving the worship space, and then kind of continuing to move out. These, and I'll talk about it in a sec, but kind of more walking, more, we did get a little bit of there's a particularly treacherous point that they didn't want us to get hurt on, so they kind of bust us past a few miles, so could have been a few more miles as far as I was concerned, but then finally we kind of got done and we were ready for, a little bit of this, and I say that, and then even more so a little bit of this, but part of that is this juxtaposition of that is to go from eating these salted fried peppers and drinking a beer and talking about kind of the experience of the day, or not even talking about that, talking about the things that soldiers talk about and veterans talk about, and then the radical difference between those two, the radical difference between that, the encounter of that baptismal room, and then the encounter of this glorified dorm room, which is which is where we would end up. We ended up that day, and that's kind of, and this is pretty typical of what they all looked like. This is what you get. There's some are nicer than others, but this is the general idea of. You show up by 3-4 o'clock. You'll get your bunk, and they're kicking you out the door by 7:30, 8 o'clock. Like nope. There's no late checkout. There's no you're back on the road. The part of the albergue system is to keep you on the road. The third story, and I promise I'm going to keep us to time. The third story is encounter, and I really talk about this as the Camino itself, which is an encounter itself. You encounter people along the way. You've got the pilgrims, the fellow pilgrims along the way. You'll encounter the geography, the path itself, and all of the both the physical beauty that's there, but also the incredible created beauty. Every town has a cathedral. Every place has and so for instance, these two places. Well, I'll talk about those in a minute, and then. So just in terms of the first kind of the encounter of pilgrim, the real privilege. This is a lot. This is what kind of the end of our day looked like most days. Is a common table, sitting around. This was actually a breakfast meal, but it was the same. It looks the same. No matter what. That we would we would often we were actually given something to talk about or to think about through the course of our day, and then we'd kind of be asked to share about, what did you encounter on the road around the topic of the day, but it was really the depth of getting to know these guys around this table. There around that table is one of the first guys that went into Afghanistan in 2002, 2003. Early on, around the table is some of the some of the deepest, kind of the deepest thinking MI officers you'll ever meet, who literally, in the course of their duty, they point a finger and then that person dies. They look at a screen and they point a finger and that person dies. That they literally have that. They walk with that. And there's a Royal Marine guy who has been he was on sniper teams his whole career, and he's probably killed more people than I've met, and he is literally the nicest man I've ever met in my life. He is truly. I truly am impressed by the character of him. There's a truck driver. There's a chaplain's assistant. And there's even a guy there, and I'll talk about him in a minute, actually. So we'll keep going. And this again, and the conversations that would happen along this way were truly sacred and divine encounters that you encountered not only them, but you kind of encountered yourself along the way, and then you'd encounter other people. So up here on the screen, this is Mary. Mary is a nurse she's a retired nurse from outside of St. Louis. She felt like she needed to do the Camino, so she came over to walk the Camino for a week. She got 3 days in, and she called home. She called her husband at home and said, "I can't come home. I have to do the whole Camino Francés." And literally, what was going to be a 6-day trip turned into a 40-day trip. And so yeah, and they're still married. And so she got the bus and went to France and began in France. But she had been following our group on Instagram, and so so she saw our little patches that are on our rucksacks. And I've never, as a preacher, you don't get a lot of fangirls. By the way, you might not know that. It's not a thing that happens. There's not a lot of screaming. It's not like the Beatles getting off the plane. That doesn't happen much. But when she kind of encountered us, it was a fangirl moment. That I'm like, oh my, she was like, oh my God, Warriors of the Way, like, oh my God. It was like, so, and we got the privilege to walk with her for a while. And again, she had been on Camino at that point for about 30-something days, and to kind of talk with her what that had been like, and to hear her story of what compelled her to be there and why, and just also her real, again, kind of that witness bearing thing, of bearing witness to, the fact that, she, having been a nurse her whole career, she had a sense of what it was for, people who'd been in the violence business to come and seek this kind of healing. And so it was really a profound encounter, I think, for every one of us. And then this is kind of the end of the day, and the little guy there, who's one of the things about Camino that's powerful is that there is this sense of that the Spaniards have owned Camino. It's theirs, and it is their hospitality. That people who, if you don't buy a house near the Camino de Santiago thinking you're going to shut your shades and just get these stupid people off my lawn. Like the people who live near the Camino have kind of been called there to do hospitality work to some degree or another. And this guy, he was, our waiter, but he was in many ways, like he had this profound, he was a profound encounter with hospitality. Like and it wasn't, just because he brought us food, which was awesome, but it was him knowing we were pilgrims, knowing that what we were engaged in, there was for him kind of almost a sacred tending in what he was doing in his hospitality work, and that became a great day really because of his work. So the guy I was telling you about, also in terms of encounter, so yeah, I know it says no photos, so sue me. So this guy he considers himself a Templar monk or a Templar knight, He considers himself a self-appointed Templar Knight, and the job of the Templar Knights back in the medieval age was the keeping of the way. So that now he is blind, but he has, you can't see it because it's on the other side, but he has a suit of armor over there, and he is a living anachronism. And there was literally a line out the door to go get a blessing by this guy. A line out the door. This guy sitting in his little, that's really most of the thing, of the place, actually. Like, I'm almost to the door where I am there. Now, the guy to my left is a guy by the name of David. David was in the 10th Mountain Division, and he was shot in the head. He was shot in the head. Like, he was shot in the head in such a way that they had to put his ear back on, shot in the head. When that happens to someone, and when you're wounded in such a way, there is, and particularly in America, there is a whole world that goes that rallies around you and seeks to tend you, and seeks to care for you, and seeks to tell you how you are and how you're going to be the rest of your life. There were people who believed he wouldn't walk. There were people who believed, and he really still struggled to walk because he didn't have a whole lot of equilibrium in his head. And so, as a result of that, but he was called to go on this. He was called to come onto the Camino, and he did every single thing that we did. Some days he was not the last guy in. For me, he was one of the most amazing miracles I witnessed on the Camino, not because he had been injured and he was overcoming his injury, but he had been told he was a victim since 2006, he had every right to cash that check. He had every right to cash that check. He had every right to live the rest of his life and simply not do another push-up, not struggle for another thing because of all that had been and he's been through a lot, both in his family and both in many different ways. And I can tell you this because he's very open with his story, and I'm not violating your confidence in this. But to say, to see him kind of go up to this, this Templar Knight who was blind, this guy who has another head wound, and to receive this blessing from him, and to receive the stamp, and to walk out this journey. Dave is not the same guy he was when he stepped on the Camino to when he stepped off the Camino. The profound amount of not because of what happened to him physically, but because of the self that he reclaimed along the way. That he truly was he still had some fight in him. He was still a warrior. He still had the ability to stand and deliver. Maybe not in the same way, maybe not with the same power, but he was still there. And then some days it's just kind of this, like, okay, we're getting close to time, so I want to respect a little bit. So, but this is part of the things that you'll encounter on the path. So one of the things that Franco did is that he built a lot of dams. He was all about modernizing Spain, and so but the villages were often at the base of the mountain or the base of the hill next to the stream, because that's where the water was. You build the dam, the village goes away. And so he would flood the village, and he would help the people build new homes, sort of, but he would never flood a church. And so if you look on there, all those little white things over there are numbers. And so that church, which is really kind of a brutal, not particularly great, church in terms of architectural sense, that Romanesque church was taken apart, every stone numbered, taken up the hill, and rebuilt on its current site where they relocated the town to. Again, it's just one of these things that you encounter along the way, and it's like, what do I do with that? What do I do with that? If my church, if they build a dam down the road, at the foot of Mount Hope Bay, and we have to take this down stone by stone. How many stones am I going to carry? You know, what is it really, what is that level of devotion, that level of sacredness, kind of, what does it look like? And I get, you know, there's other pieces to that, but it struck me, it's not just a thing you encounter on the path, it's also the path encountering you. And the other thing you encounter along the way is St. James. He's always present, and he's always there. There is really this sense of you are being guided home. That you're kind of like, you're coming to see me, and there's always these different figures, these different places, often really strategically placed. All right, just a couple more quickly. So this is, you know, now we're pretty far into Galatia. The earth changes, and this path that you see, both on the one on the right, those trees were all planted, 100 years ago to be shade trees for pilgrims. It puts a whole different point on that thing. You know, when's the best time to plant an apple tree? 20 years ago. When's the second best time? Right now. You know, here is people's hospitality that will never meet me, that I've never met, that we're providing shade for strangers along the way. It just struck me as one of the most beautiful things that you encounter. The second, on the other side, is the fact that the soil kind of changes in Galicia. It's a little wetter, and it's a little more muddy. And so that path there was not dug out. That path is simply worn by the foot treads of pilgrims having walked across it for a millennia. And that's not even the deepest part. There's actually parts where the wall goes, I would say 30, 40 feet high, when you literally kind of descend into the earth and you're kind of walking these, and you have this sense of literally the millions of people that came before you as you stand and you step into those ways in those places. You know, and then there's just kind of the natural beauty that you encounter along the way. So this is all right. We're a little long, but I want to tell you this is kind of the story I want to close with, and offer you is that one day I was kind of, my face tells the story. I was kind of driving the struggle bus, as we like to say, and it was really something. I think it was, I didn't drink enough water or whatever, but I could not keep moving at the pace I wanted to move at. And our Jim, whose also name was Stinson, which was kind of creepy, but you don't meet a lot of them. But so Jim Stinson came alongside me and started telling me the story about when he and his wife were on Camino together, and they were going through this really rough patch, and she twisted her ankle, and they were nowhere near a road, they were nowhere near anything else, and he starts getting tough with her, and you always know how well that works. So that didn't really get the desired result, and but finally she's like, "I quit," and so she just sat down, and he's like, "Honey, we're in the middle of the trail. There is no one to come get us. There's no cab to call. There's no Uber Eats. We have to contend with this. But I've looked at your ankle, and it's not broken. Like, it's not broken. You've twisted it. Yeah, it's going to hurt when you walk on it. But that's it. You're not going to hurt it worse. You're not going to, And at that moment, she had this is the story he's telling me. She had this moment. She had this sense of like, wait, it's just going to hurt? She's like, yeah, it's just going to hurt. Like, you're going to be okay, but it's just going to hurt. She said, oh, okay. Put on a rucksack and walk down the rest of the hill. He's telling me the story because I think he felt I needed a little encouragement, and I probably did. But as we're doing it, we're crossing this bridge. And as we're crossing this bridge, you'll find different people will leave different tokens along the Camino all the way. But one is this kind of, this idea of painted rocks. There's people who do that sort of thing. And they leave painted rocks. They would leave these painted rocks along the way. And one was this painted rock that was there that said, "Life's a beach." Which is, if you know me, I'm a sailor. Saltwater is kind of my jam. There's this way in which, this notion that life's a beach, meaning life, a bitch. Life's difficult, but it also has this ability and at the same time, there can be beauty in it. And it was this story that it was the perfect counterpoint to the story in which he had just told me. It could have been anything else. It could have been like, have a Coke and a smile. It could have been anything on a rock, on a random place. But on that moment, in that place, at that time, which was happening not just to me, to all kinds of people along the way of the Camino, again and again and again. And I think it's really the thing to kind of keep, and it's what I really want to leave us with, that's the Mount of Hope, by the way. There's the pilgrims. That's us looking towards the cathedral. That's us coming into Santiago. That's the archway that takes you in, and that's the cathedral itself. But this I think it's what we can all call from in terms of this this notion of being pilgrims together. That it's going to hurt. Life is going to hurt, but it's just going to hurt. It's just going to hurt. And that once we accept that, there is beauty, and there is wonder, and there is gorgeousness, and there's loveliness all around us. But we have to contend with that basic. And I get, probably most of you figured this out in 4th grade. I got it, but I'm a slow learner, and for me, it became a really important and powerful part of the journey. This is the descent into the sepulcher, into where St. James's bones are. This was there was a special mass held for us, so they got to actually swing the Botafumeiro, which is if you haven't ever had a chance I encourage you, go look at the YouTube. The Botafumeiro is it's an 88 kilogram, so whatever that converts to, 88 kilogram hunk of silver. It's solid silver. That is swung from rafter to rafter. You can see it in this picture over here. And then this is it here. And then that's kind of our meal, our celebration meal. We're at time, but we got an incredible note from Martin Sheen, who's been a big sponsor of Warriors on the Way. If you haven't seen the movie The Way, I really encourage you to see it. It's a really lovely depiction of a lot of what happens. But his, he wrote us this handwritten letter specifically to our iteration of, and it was kind of beautiful and powerful. And then that's our last moment. That's with in the square in front of the Camino, in the front of the Cathedral de Compostela de Santiago. Whew. Okay. So thank you for that, for indulging me in that. Thank you for going on the journey with me. I hope it was meaningful for you. I hope it was worthwhile. And I hope that I'm happy to answer any questions for a minute or two as we get turned around here.
What was the language barrier?
Along the Camino, there's a lot of English spoken. Off the Camino, there isn't. So, yeah. So I want to leave you tonight with this is the Pilgrim's Prayer. This is the prayer that is in front, on top of that was at the place on top of Ocebero. Although I may have traveled all the roads, crossed mountains and valleys from east to west, if I have not discovered the freedom to be myself, I have arrived nowhere. Although I may have shared all of my possessions with people of other languages and cultures, made friends with pilgrims of 1,000 paths, or shared albergue with saints and princes, if I am not capable of forgiving my neighbor tomorrow, I have arrived nowhere. Although I may have carried my pack from beginning to end and waited to every pilgrim in need of encouragement, or given my bed to one who arrived later than I, given my bottle of water in exchange for nothing, if upon returning to my home and work I am not able to create brotherhood or to make happiness, peace, and unity, I have arrived nowhere. Although I may have had food and water each day and enjoyed roof and shower every night, or may have had my injuries well tended, if I have not discovered in all that the love of God, I have arrived nowhere. Although I may have seen all the monuments and contemplated the best sunsets, and although I may have learned a greeting in every language, or tried the clean water from every fountain, if I have not discovered who is the author of so much free beauty and so much peace, I have arrived nowhere. If from today I do not continue walking on your path, searching for and living according to what I have learned, if from today I do not see in every person, friend or foe, a companion on the Camino, if from today I do not recognize God, the God of Jesus of Nazareth, as the one God of my life, I have arrived nowhere. Peace and grace to you all, my friends.